As you may know, the mid-2010s was when anime-style games experienced a sort of boom, especially on Steam. Not only did more Japanese games get translated and localized, but the presence of those types of games on PC increased as well. Even non-Japanese developers started making games that featured anime-style visuals. One of the biggest anime-style games to come out of that time period is HuniePop. I'm sure most people watching know about this game. It's a dating sim and match 3 puzzle game with quite the sense of humor. The puzzles were fun and challenging, you had to think about what you were doing, and the characters also featured consistently funny dialogue. I'm not sure how to describe this specific type of humor, but the things the girls say sometimes sounds like it should be coming out of a South Park character's mouth. Since its release in 2015, fans have been waiting for the sequel. That is something other developers have been trying to capitalize on by making HuniePop clones. Some turned out to be enjoyable, but most lacked HuniePop's charm, gameplay depth, or just generally came across as low effort. Now in 2021, HuniePop 2 Double Date is finally here, and thankfully, it's not just the first game with different characters and a new coat of paint. There's actually some fundamental changes with how the gameplay works, since the game now has a Double Date format. There's of course a number of questions here. How does HuniePop 2 compare to the first game? Is it as good or better? In a way, my opinion is a bit inconclusive. I'm going to say the games are different, which is vague, I know, though I think I prefer the original games' format a bit more. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to play the same game with a visual upgrade and the number 2 stuck on the end of the name. I like that you have to approach HuniePop 2 differently, and a lot of the new mechanics work well. It's also a bit of a take that to all the HuniePop clones who thought they could come up with a successor themselves without trying to innovate in the gameplay department. HuniePop 2 can be obtained from a number of sources, including GOG and Steam. The GOG version is more tame, but it can be patched no problem. The Steam version is uncensored, but you can play the game in censored mode if that's more your thing. When you start a new game, all that can be toggled there. Where it says code, you can type in various secret codes to unlock outfits. They can be found on the official Twitter page of the game, and I'm pretty sure you can find them now on Steam as well. You know, on those guide things. You can also choose your gender. There's 3 difficulty settings. I stuck with the regular setting. And you can also change Polly's junk. I think the icons probably do an adequate job explaining which is which. There is a storyline, believe it or not. It's quite out there. There's 2 beings called Nymphojin, who awake every 10,000 years by what the game calls a cosmic super period of unspeakable PMS. As a graphic designer, I always think PMS stands for Pantone Matching System, but yeah, not in this case. A hero usually deals with the situation, but this time around, there doesn't seem to be one. Q decided to call you up for help because you did a good job in the first game. You go to a tropical island and try to have as many threesomes as possible because that'll save the world. Yeah, that's one hell of a plot right there. That all being said, it's quite funny. Once you get past the tutorial, you start getting into the swing of things and you'll start to understand how the game flows. It goes kind of like this. You look for girls on the Finder, go on a double date, in other words, play a round of match 3, win a couple of times and you unlock a CG and get a pair of wings. You need to gather as many wings as possible. That's kind of the objective of the game there, to reach the end part. That's how the game goes if explained in a really simplistic way. Each element does have more to it, of course. The Finder shows you which girls are together at one location at the same time. You don't have to do anything to organize a double date. The game takes care of the logistics for you. You can see the state of the relationship by the heart symbol in the middle. A question mark means you haven't interacted with both at the same time before. If compatibility has been confirmed, it'll tell you. Once you win a match, it'll show that there is attraction. And when you win again, you'll unlock the CG, if you know what I mean. After each date, you're not going to be able to go out with the same pair again right away, so you start basically randomly going on dates with whoever is available at the time. And that's basically just, how it continues. So the date itself is, of course, the puzzle gameplay. Like with the previous game, you want to match 3 of the same colored tokens. Matches give you points which count towards a predetermined total that you need to reach in a limited amount of turns. Matching more than 3 tokens will give you more points, of course. Bells give you an extra turn. The hearts increase passion, which is essentially a multiplier. And the droplets are sentiment, which allows you to use items. You don't want to match the broken hearts because that equals minus points. Each girl has a favorite and least favorite trait, with the least favorite trait, of course, giving you the least amount of points. But that's where the new double date mechanics come in handy. If there happens to be a large number of a specific token on the board that one of the girls doesn't really like, then you can switch to the other girl to maximize points. But at the same time, managing your tension between them is another challenge. Matching tiles uses up stamina, and the bigger the combo, the more stamina is consumed. So you have to keep switching back and forth. If a stamina bar runs out completely, it'll take a few turns to come back up, and you're stuck with the other girl for that time. If her stamina runs out before the other one's back up to 4 bars, then you fail. Matching broken hearts will deplete the active girl's stamina completely, so you want to avoid that too. There's a few other things you have to manage which can be a bit tricky. For example, each girl has their own passion and sentiments, so it's possible to waste a bunch of turns trying to get both up. I like that though, because it's a different kind of challenge. It's what makes HuniePop 2 different from both its predecessor and its clones. Both winning and losing will give you money, but instead of a single currency like before, it's actually 4 different kinds of fruit, which all correspond to a trait. In the store, items and gifts are grouped in these 4 categories. I guess it's a way of doing things, but wouldn't a more conventional monetary system be fine as well? I'm still not sure what to think of it. There's various items in the game just like before. The most important ones you're going to use are the date gifts, which are used during dates as the name implies. They do things like turn all broken hearts into other traits, or consume all tokens of a particular trait, for example. Each one uses up a specific amount of sentiment. You know, sometimes it's like 4 or 6 or whatever. You can think of date items as ways to gain points and or make the board a bit safer without having to use up turns. It's best to match date items with the girls you're going on a date on, because some items can be quite specific. There's also other items too, like unique gifts that will only work on specific characters and things like that. The game explains all of that stuff to you. By the way, characters have baggage, which you can learn about by talking to them. Some can be used to your advantage, like Nora being immune to matching broken hearts. But usually it's not something good, so items can sometimes circumvent those situations a little bit. Overall, I found the gameplay a good challenge on normal difficulty, and the new double date switching features makes the puzzle gameplay unique compared to the first game. But there's some things I'm not super fond of, and I'm gonna mention them now. Probably the biggest thing I'm not thrilled with is Immersion, which may sound a bit strange, but I reckon HuniePop 1 felt more like a dating sim. You get to know the girls better through conversations, they text you pics when your relationship gets better, and the girls also have a sort of schedule where they're likely to be at certain times of the day, depending, when or where they work and what their interests are. And there's certain things you can only do at specific times of the day as well, like drinking. In HuniePop 2, it's not really like that. The characters feel like they have less depth to them because their conversations don't feel that important or perhaps intimate. Probably because the girls seem to be more focused on each other rather than, just you, the protagonist. It's more like you're just tagging along and finding out whether the 2 girl characters are into each other or not. Getting to know the characters just doesn't feel as important here in terms of, the gameplay function. There's also something about how items are managed that I'm not really into. In the first game, you'd have some sort of space for your items, like on the bottom, but in HuniePop 2, that isn't universal, but rather each girl has slots where you have to drop the items into. So that means you're forced to allocate date items to specific girls. You can't just use them on whoever you like, and let's say you didn't consume the item in a match, then you have to take it out of the slot and back into your inventory if you want to use it on another date with another girl. I feel having a universal inventory for that sort of thing would have been so much more easy. Or convenient, I guess is a better way of putting it. In terms of the characters, I honestly like the first game's cast a bit more. I think that's partly due to the double date format I talked about earlier. Perhaps in the old game's format, the new cast would feel a bit more fleshed out. But at the same time, I think some of the characters in the first game were a bit more believable. In the second game, some of the characters are a bit more out there, I guess you could say. In both design as well as personality, but hey. That being said, there are actually, as you probably noticed, characters from the first game that make a reappearance. I think that's helpful overall. They're familiar and they remember you as well from the last time. I bet some people would have preferred to see other characters return, like Audrey, who seems to be a bit of a fan favorite, just because of, the hilarious things she says. But overall, I still think it's okay. The graphics have been improved, which you probably already noticed. For some reason, so many of these dating sim-style games have a 4:3 aspect ratio and somewhat low resolution. HuniePop 2 is at least 16 by 9 this time round, and 1080p now. Though I'm not sure if you can go higher with the resolution. Maybe someone with 4K can comment whether the game's, or the game runs natively at 4K as well. Something small but really convenient is the fact that a girl's liked and disliked traits are listed in plain view. In the first game, I kept forgetting what they were and constantly had to bring up the menu to remind myself, which is actually not as bad as what I did in the second game. For some reason, I thought both of the icons were like traits they liked, so in some of the gameplay footage you see me matching, their least liked trait on purpose. So that doesn't help in terms of points. But anyway, that was just, for the first little bit there. And then I realized that I did something stupid. In case you're wondering about patches, you may have spotted that the footage shows multiple versions of the game. The 1.01 patch had most of the game balance changes, with the later patches being more about bug fixes and quality of life improvements. So the review is of the 10.01 and later versions of the game. I only played the launch version for maybe an hour or so. I actually didn't notice the game balance changes as I was still getting into it. I did read some comments on how the patch made the game too easy, but most reviews seem to be positive, so maybe it's not really a big deal. Perhaps someone who actually played the launch version as well, but got farther into it can comment on that. But personally, I don't think there's any problem with the difficulty settings. In the end, I think HuniePop 2 Double Date is a great sequel. I like the Double Date format and how you have to switch your focus as you play. Despite my quibbles on how certain things work, the actual gameplay works very well, and the dialogue is still funny to listen to. By the way, since we're on the topic of lewd games, some of you may know about YouTube deleting the second channel back in January. I used to post VN playthroughs as well as a lot of those budget games that are often HuniePop clones. The VN playthroughs is what killed the channel, but I made a new one. Follow the link in the description or the card on the top right for the new second channel. And you'll also find more info there on what happened and what I'll do in the future. I re-uploaded several things which are safe, and by now there's a few more things posted as well. And of course, there's going to be new stuff coming in the future over there. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed the review. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.